Hi, beautiful people. So, if you're a Leo sun, Libra rising, or want to know more about this sun ascendant combination, then this is the video for you. Today, I'm going to examine the birth chart of Deion Primetime Sanders, one of the NFL greats that I absolutely love. Deion, or Primetime, had an incredible impact on the game of football, and I'm going to discuss what his birth chart indicates about his tremendous success. If you don't know anything about Deion Sanders, that's fine. I'm going to do a deep dive on his contributions to the NFL, and then I'll do an in-depth analysis of his birth chart. Deion's outstanding results are due in large part to him putting in the work, but let's see what the universe has to say about this amazing Leo Sun, Libra rising combination. So first, what made Deion Sanders such a great football player? Well, he played for several teams: the Atlanta Falcons, the San Francisco 49ers, the Dallas Cowboys, the Washington Redskins — they were the Redskins at this time — and the Baltimore Ravens. He's also a two-time Super Bowl champion. He won with the San Francisco 49ers and the Cowboys. He was the NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 1994. He's an 8-time Pro Bowl selection from 1991 to 1994 and 1996 to 1999. He's a 6-time first-team All-Pro. He's one of the NFL's 100 best players in history. So that's a really great honor and just confirms that he's really one of the best cornerbacks the league has ever seen. Over the course of his career, he's had 53 interceptions. He's returned interceptions for over 1,300 yards. He's had 9 interception return touchdowns. He's had a total of 22 touchdowns. And let me throw this in here really quickly. The reason why this is so important is because Deion Sanders was a defensive player. So defensive players, we don't usually think of as scoring touchdowns. But given how good he was at his role, which is a cornerback, he did get that ball into the end zone numerous times. He had 2,199 punt return yards. He had 3,523 kick return yards, and he led the NFL in punt returns in 1998 with a 15.6-yard average. He is also a Pro Football Hall of Fame inductee, the class of 2011. And he's one of the few players we've seen in the game who scored a touchdown in 6 different ways. He helped to lead the 49ers to their Super Bowl victory, and he also did the same thing with the Cowboys. So let's just really quickly talk about what he actually does as a cornerback. Cornerback, again, is a defensive football player, and they're designed to cover wide receivers. They're usually the fastest player on the defense, and they're really just trying to prevent that wide receiver from catching the ball. They're supposed to also tackle the wide receiver if they do happen to catch the ball, or any player for that matter. They're really trying to intercept passes, which is what Deion was really good at. And sometimes they're also being asked to blitz the quarterback. So they're just trying to rush the passer and put some pressure on the offensive team. So he's also one of the few players who can play both cornerback and wide receiver. So he played wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, and he was the first full-time NFL player to do this since the 1940s. So again, this like versatility of Deion Sanders is going to become a very strong theme throughout his career. And we're going to talk about how his birth chart speaks to that, this ability to adapt and this ability to just shine in the limelight is really critical to understanding how he was so successful. So let's take a look at his early years. Deion was born on August 9th, 1967 in Fort Myers, Florida, and grew up with his mother, Connie Knight, stepfather, Willie Knight, and his sister, Tracy Knight. His parents played a major role in instilling a sense of discipline and a strong work ethic. Deion grew up in a tough neighborhood, but stayed out of trouble by focusing on sports. Sanders once recalled a life-changing moment in high school when he saw childhood friends fall into crime and drugs. He made a promise to himself to work hard in sports and never let that life pull him down. This decision drove him to work really hard, and he eventually landed a scholarship at Florida State University. As a child, he idolized Muhammad Ali, loving his confidence and charisma, traits that he himself would later embody in his own career. Even as a kid, Deion had a big personality. He would often talk about playing in the NFL and the MLB, believing he could excel in both football and baseball. From an exceptionally young age, Sanders was fast, agile, and innovative, making him a perfect fit for football. He attended North Fort Myers High School, where he played multiple sports: football, baseball, basketball, and track and field. He earned the nickname Primetime in high school for his flashy style and his dominance on the field. He earned all state honors in football, baseball, and basketball. His high school coaches saw his potential and encouraged him to focus on football. Deion thrived on competition and enjoyed being in the spotlight. His flashy personality and confidence were a natural fit for the sport, where he could make big plays and entertain the fans. During his college career at Florida State from 1985 to 1988, his talent was on full display. He chose to play football, baseball, and ran track for the Florida State Seminoles. He became a two-time All-American as a cornerback in football, and he won the Jim Thorpe Award in 1988 as the nation's best defensive back. He also played in the 1987 College World Series with FSU's baseball team. He competed in track and field, and he even ran the anchor leg in a 4x100 relay race just hours before playing a baseball game. So these early experiences showcased Deion's exceptional athleticism and set the stage for his two-sport professional career, NFL and the MLB. But why did Deion decide to focus on football initially? Well, there are a lot of reasons why an athlete at that time might have felt that football was the better choice. There was a clearer path to professional success. The NFL offered higher salaries than the MLB in the late 1980s, and his extreme talent as a cornerback made him a top draft pick. He was 5th overall in the 1989 draft, where he was chosen by the Atlanta Falcons. Football was where Sanders felt he could make the biggest impact. So what did those early years in the NFL look like for Sanders? He went to the Atlanta Falcons, and at that time, the Atlanta Falcons were not really a championship caliber team. They had a flashy style. They had a really strong offense that was very explosive, but they struggled on the defensive side, and they really had never had a lot of success in the playoffs. When Deion was there from 1989 to 1993, the team was inconsistent and they were struggling to find success. Under head coach Jerry Glanville, they had a 10-6 record and made the playoffs for the first time in nearly a decade in 1991. However, that would be their only playoff appearance in the early 1990s. While Deion brought a lot of energy to the defense, he faced several challenges both on and off the field. He really had to deal with the overall lack of team success. So there was not a group of players around him that could support his particular style of play. There was a lack of consistent leadership as well, and so the team was not really able to build a championship level roster. In Super Bowl 29, Deion played a key role in helping the 49ers defeat the San Diego Chargers 49-26 on January 29, 1995, in their first Super Bowl since the late 1980s. Here's how he impacted the game. Number one, he really had a shutdown cornerback performance. Deion covered the Chargers wide receiver Tony Martin. His presence really eliminated one side of the field, forcing San Diego's offense to attack other areas. Although he didn't have an interception in the game, his coverage was crucial in limiting deep passing plays. He provided the 49ers with the elite coverage they had been missing in previous seasons. He also had a big offensive play. Deion, who played some wide receiver for the 49ers that season, had a huge 47-yard reception from Steve Young in the second quarter. This catch set up a 49ers touchdown, helping them to take control of the game. It was a rare moment when a primarily defensive player had a major impact on the offense in a Super Bowl. Finally, the 49ers dominated the game from start to finish, with Steve Young throwing a record 6 touchdown passes. Deion's coverage helped to neutralize the Chargers' deep threats, which contributed to the historic victory. His confidence and energy elevated the entire defense. Well, the very next year, Deion was back in the Super Bowl. In Super Bowl 30, held on January 28th, 1996, Deion played a key role in helping the Dallas Cowboys defeat the Pittsburgh Steelers 27-17. Some of the things that he did during that game, he had a big offensive play in the first quarter. Again, even though Deion was primarily a cornerback, he was being used on the offense in the same way that he was being used with the offense of the 49ers. So in this game with the Cowboys, he caught a 47-yard pass from Troy Aikman, the Dallas Cowboys quarterback. He lined up as a wide receiver and he caught this pass that helped to set up a touchdown for Emmitt Smith. This unexpected play showed his versatility and helped the Cowboys take control early on. Deion continued to play amazing defense, and he locked down the Steelers' wide receiver Yancey Thigpen, keeping him from making any big plays. His coverage forced the Steelers to rely on shorter passes and their run game. Again, even though he didn't have an interception, he has this huge offensive play, and he's also really controlling the offense of the opposing team because they don't really have the same type of threats that they usually have given his incredible defensive play. Super Bowl 30 solidified Deion's legacy as one of the greatest cornerbacks in NFL history, having played a key role in 2 straight Super Bowl winning teams. But life wasn't always easy or perfect, and of course, Deion did have challenges during his NFL career. Obviously, playing for the Atlanta Falcons early on presented a bit of a struggle. He was balancing 2 sports, the NFL and the MLB, and he also had to worry about injuries, which began to pop up as he got a bit older. These became more of a problem. Not only that, there were contract disputes. When he moved away from Atlanta to San Francisco and then to Dallas in 1995, there was a lot of criticism of the big money contracts that he was negotiating from both fans and the media. Let's lean into that a bit more in terms of the criticism and controversy that he faced. So one of the things that always came up was his flashy personality. Deion's confidence, his celebrations, and his primetime persona made him a very polarizing figure. Some traditionalists viewed his showmanship as a form of arrogance, though he backed up everything he did with his incredible plays. Here are some ways that his personality came through. So he would make grand entrances at games, often showing up in very expensive suits, gold chains, and sunglasses, just exuding that star power that says, "Look at me." He had legendary celebrations in the end zone. He was often high-stepping it into the end zone, dancing before he even scored. And even when defenders were chasing him, he would still make it clear that he was going to get away. He frequently spoke boldly about his talent, saying things like, "Water covers 2/3 of the earth, I cover the rest." Okay, and if you understand what his position was on the field, you understand why that's such a clever and very fun thing for him to say. He also had a lot of confidence when he was drafted in 1989. He said that he was going to end up playing for a very big contract. When asked if he'd go to a team with a low-paying contract, he replied, "I won't be there long. They'll pay me or trade me," right? So again, he understood his value. When the New York Giants called him for a pre-draft meeting, he walked out of the interview when they handed him a massive playbook saying, "What's this? I ain't got time for this," right? So he always had this view that he knew what to do and that he would be successful no matter what in his own right. There was also a bit of controversy between Deion and Jerry Rice. So Jerry Rice is a Hall of Fame wide receiver. Recall that a cornerback covers a wide receiver. He trash talked Jerry Rice constantly, even though he and Jerry Rice later became teammates. And despite being a showman, he backed it up by shutting down elite receivers, including Rice at times. So he had this rivalry with other greats in the league, which only contributed to the vision of him as someone who had this thirst for being in the spotlight and being number one, a true competitor and a true showman. Of course, his off the field celebrity lifestyle drew attention. He also had a nickname of Neon Dion. Uh, the style that he chose to wear was embodied in a lot of commercials, music videos, and a rap album that he released. He frequently appeared on TV shows during that time as well, and of course had some legendary Nike commercials. So Dion became an icon, one that was love him or hate him, you were never going to ignore him. He was always going to be in the spotlight. He was always going to be in your face, and he was always going to back it up with the type of performance that could only be described as elite. So let's take a closer look at, or let's start to take a look at Dion's birth chart. I'm going to start this analysis with a closer look at the placement of the sun, moon, and rising or ascendant within the chart, followed by an interpretation of the aspects, including conjunction, sextile, trine, square, and opposition aspects. There are three core areas that I'll focus on in order to make sure I draw out the information that is most relevant to our purposes of exploring professional success. These are identity, an emphasis on the natal sun placement and aspects, emotional orientation, emphasis on natal moon placement and aspects, and life path. Ascendant placement and sun rising combinations are extremely important here. The goal is to weave it all together and get a very accurate picture of the individual that is Deion Primetime Sanders, and in doing so, understand the way in which the Leo Sun Libra rising combination can present. Deion Sanders was born on August 9th, 1967 in Fort Myers, Florida. This means he has the sun in the sign of Leo, moon in the sign of Libra, and rising in the sign of Libra. The sun represents your ego, your essence, the unchanging part of you, the calm, steady, deep, and lasting force felt within you, enabling you to exert willpower, make decisions, and direct all the other aspects of your life. So think of the sun as your will. It is your true self. Although it's not readily visible, it is the framework in which you operate. With the sun in Leo, the identity is going to be focused on self-appreciation. There's going to be a focus on developing self-appreciation for someone with sun in the sign of Leo. Leo natives are dignified, courageous, affectionate, powerful, generous, playful, optimistic, ambitious, loyal, and cheerful. However, on the negative side, they can be quite demanding, intolerant, domineering, lazy, closed-minded, and self-centered. They choose to do things that give them wide scope for creativity, organizing, and leadership. Although appearing strong on the outside, most Leos are inwardly sensitive and their feelings are easily hurt. When this occurs, they can turn the object of their affection into a bit of an enemy. That's when their kind of ego has been offended. Leo natives have a flair for the dramatic. They also enjoy telling stories, being vocal, being the center of attention, and having a good time, and really running the show. Mean and cruel acts are generally considered to be beneath them, but they won't hesitate to respond if they feel like force is necessary. No matter what their actions are, they always have a belief that whatever they do is for the other person's benefit. So they always believe that they're the ones who's being magnanimous, right? Building a strong sense of personal identity is the greatest priority in the life of someone with a sun in Leo. They will seek to measure the extent to which they've identified who they are by the amount of respect or admiration that they evoke from others, and by evidence of their creative efforts. So they look to see themselves manifested in the world around them. They have really warm human qualities, which under normal circumstances ensure that they are the center of events and the focus of other people's attention. But they also really want to feel respected professionally. Prestige and recognition are basic career needs for someone with Sun in Leo. So this is going to be someone who's going to be very focused on making sure that their natural leadership abilities give them the ability to demonstrate the capacity they have to inspire others through their own example, right? So they really want to stand out as someone who is able to move others into their own creative energy and into their own sense of who they are by looking to them as being the source of that concept of who they are. They have a natural affinity for things which exude quality, and they can really set the style for any place that they live or work. As long as a person with Leo and Sun feels appreciated, they will function well professionally. So they really need that admiration from others. It also really bothers them if they have to take a lot of orders from other people. And that's why they also really gravitate towards leadership positions. So in thinking just about the Leo Sun, we see a lot of the components of Deion's behavior come into focus just through that alone. But let's look at some of the aspects in relation to the Sun. So Deion has the Sun trining Saturn aspect in his chart, and this combination is really about having a winning self-esteem. So when this placement appears in a natal chart, you're going to have a hardworking and ambitious person with a strong drive to prove him or herself in society. There may be difficulties with authorities despite your desire to live up to the expectations of society. You will learn important lessons and ultimately develop a self-sufficiency and discipline which lays the foundation for success later in life. With this placement, it is important for you to overcome negativity or pessimism concerning the future. Not all success is won by hard work alone. You are often motivated more by fear of failure than the promise of reward. This is critical, and this can hold you back from realizing your full potential. So the desire not to lose is not the same as the desire to win. And understanding and feeling the difference is going to be critical for someone with this particular placement. If all goes well, you will acquire more and more responsibility during the course of your life. Let's think about Deion in this aspect, right? So now he's moving into coaching. That's consistent with taking on more responsibility. And the key thing about someone with the Sun trine Saturn here is that they deserve it, right? They've worked hard for it. They've put in the effort. This particular individual is going to be conscientious and it's going to take their responsibilities very seriously. This is the person that other people rely on, right? And also there's an element of this personality that they would, in some regards, prefer to be the power behind the throne, so to speak, as opposed to being on the throne themselves. Now, we don't see this necessarily with Deion, and that's because of other influences within the chart. But that's another way in which a Sun trining Saturn can manifest itself. So one of the other things I want to point out about this particular placement is that this individual is really good at delegating responsibility to others who are actually qualified. So they do demonstrate really good leadership capabilities in the sense that not only can they do things themselves, but they also have the ability to identify the best person to get the job done. Someone with the Sun trining Saturn is at their best when they can continue to focus on shedding the old and cultivating the new, rather than becoming stagnant within a stable and comfortable circumstance. And if we think about the way in which this plays out in the life of someone like Primetime, he moved to teams relatively consistently throughout his career. And obviously, although he was successful in his own right with a team like the Atlanta Falcons, he chose to move on to the 49ers and then to the Cowboys because he wanted to win. He wanted to be part of a winning team, and he continued to seek out those challenges that would provide that opportunity. Now, let's look at another aspect in his chart, which is the sun squaring Mars, which leads to this sense of competition. Okay. So, someone with a sun square Mars is going to be an extremely dynamic person with an excellent sense of when to grasp opportunities. Someone with this particular placement thrives on competition and loves a good fight. They are not necessarily a diplomat, okay? But in situations which require courage and decision, this is the right person for that task. So women with this placement may experience a certain degree of conflict with aggressive or dominating men, but ultimately these problems are solved by learning to be more aware of your own individual personality and of the personality of the person that you're dealing with. And not only that, but this particular placement suggests that someone should be in a job that provides you with a challenge. Okay, you need to be able to exert that energy that comes from the sun squaring Mars in a way that allows you to really go out and conquer, if you will. This person is going to have a pioneering spirit, and they're going to be willing to take on necessary confrontations to get ahead. They're also going to get bored easily, and when someone with this placement gets bored, they tend to get into trouble. So when you encounter an obstacle, you tend to bang your head against it until it goes away, right? You're not going to leave, but you're going to just keep on kind of pushing and pushing and pushing. In this instance, sometimes it can be better for you to plan before you take action and strive to be less impulsive. And if you find yourself getting into unnecessary conflicts, it's important to try to cultivate a spirit of compromise or learn how to compromise in certain situations. But winning is really important to the ego of someone with a sun squaring Mars. And again, think about our subject here, Deion. There's absolutely no way to mistake the fact that he wanted to win at all costs. The development of the ego and the kind of clash of the impulsiveness that the Mars brings in can really slow down the emotional development of this particular person. So there can sometimes be a sense of emotional immaturity, but that can be addressed if you're aware of that particular disposition. Ultimately, if this particular placement is combined with other positive aspects, which is what we see here in this chart, it drives the individual for a constant search for kind of personal affirmation, right? There's this idea that I'm always going to be able to demonstrate that I'm good, I'm the best, I am prime time. So let's look at one final aspect that comes through in Deion's chart, and that's the sun conjuncting Jupiter. And that brings what we consider to be a certain level of insight to this individual. So one of the greatest professional assets of someone with this placement is their optimism and ability to envision and bring to life the future. So if you think about what we know in terms of Primetime, he was speaking about his ability to play multiple sports from a very early age. There's this idea that there's infinite possibility. A person with this particular conjunction can occupy a high-profile position in which their charisma and personal identity are going to play a leading role. It doesn't get any more on the nose than Primetime with this. This person is going to be strongly motivated to acquire insight in their life, and they're rather philosophically minded. They would function well as an advisor, a counselor, simply as a leader figure, read coach, for example. And this is going to be someone to whom others turn for advice and a sense of direction. It is essential for the growth of this person that they face challenges. Okay, and think about all of this, putting all of this together. We see how it would be possible for someone with this particular type of chart to do the things that Deion has done. This particular individual is going to need wide horizons and will probably find that travel is necessary as part of their work. This person is going to be very cosmopolitan in nature and enjoy cultural aspects of their profession. Ultimately, the drawback of this particular placement is that someone will have a lot of difficulty admitting mistakes. And although they have vision and they have the ability to kind of see the future, they can be overly optimistic and often can be perceived as chasing an illusion or chasing a dream of prosperity that isn't necessarily real. So in so much as vision is necessary for success and to be a great leader, it's important to pay attention to planning and for someone with this particular placement to think more about the details and the technical aspects of what it is that they are trying to accomplish. So let's take a closer look at the moon in this particular natal chart. The moon is as important as the sun in your birth chart. The sign that the moon is in shows what makes you feel emotionally nurtured, secure, and satisfied. Because emotions run so deep, the moon sign represents your greatest needs. It also shows how you nurture others. In many ways, the implications of your moon placement are hidden to the general public. It's your inner core, that aspect of you that feels negative emotions like jealousy, hate, fear, and even fantasies that might be very private and personal. On the other hand, it's your moon sign that spontaneously feels and expresses joy and pleasure. The moon really modifies your sun sign, and it brings new forces, different motivations, and spiritual elements to the character of your sun sign. So with Deion, we see a moon in Libra, and this is someone who's really inclined to smooth out differences. That's really what their greatest emotional need is going to be, and that's going to be how they tend to nurture others. This is an extremely socially oriented person, and you're going to get a lot of pleasure out of personal relationships. In career matters, you have a natural diplomatic talent, and this can mean that you work well in a profession where personal relationships are important. So, for example, working with a team, working with personnel, and working with the public, all of which we see in this particular instance. Matters of taste are also important here. This individual won't feel uncomfortable if there's an inharmonious environment. So having a sense of harmony and balance is going to be really important to this person. But they're also very good at creating harmony and balance within their own environment. So even if they don't sense that in the people around them, they can try to create that within themselves. They tend to shy away from confrontation. So this is an interesting aspect that, again, we wouldn't necessarily see on display if we think about someone like Deion Primetime Sanders. But keep in mind that the moon sign is hidden, right? It's really hidden from the public eye. And oftentimes only those who are very close to you would understand your emotional response and how you react to certain types of situations that implicate your feelings. There's one particular aspect that's important to emphasize here in the chart for Deion, and that is the moon sextile Mercury, which brings about emotional awareness. So this is really important when we think about the way in which Deion was able to communicate and project himself through the way that he spoke publicly. A person with this particular placement has great persuasive talents because they make an emotional investment in everything that they say. So when he's speaking, he's feeling it, right? Like he's actually bringing a level of passion to what he's saying that it's unmistakable. So at its best, this allows a person to use their communicative talents to sway the feelings of the people around you, which is obviously a great asset when speaking to the public. You really know how to tap into the mood of the crowd and have this instinctive talent for saying the right thing. A person with a moon sextile Mercury needs to be passionately engaged in their work, and they function best in a role which gives them human contact. So again, we see all these factors coming together to suggest that Deion has found a path that really speaks to his talents. This person works better with people than with things, and there's good business sense, although not necessarily based on being overly analytical, right? It's more so based on their judgments and how they feel. This person is relatively easy to read, so in this sense, their emotions might not be hidden, and they will often encounter conflict because they might not always say the right thing, but when they say it with a lot of passion. Again, the key thing here is for someone with this ability to communicate, it's ideal for them to be in a position that allows them to come into contact with the public. So finally, let's get to this concept of the rising sign and what this particular combination means for someone who has a Leo sun and a Libra rising. So with the rising in Libra, the key aspect of a person's presentation to the world is going to be one of relating. This person is going to have a talent for dealing with people. So as we go through this chart, I hope you're kind of understanding the way in which all the different layers of identity are reinforced, they're integrated. It's almost like a mosaic. And we see this idea of someone who is going to be successful in the spotlight, who likes dealing with people, who has the ability to communicate quickly, who has a lot of emotional intelligence or emotional awareness. We see that this is really outlined in pretty great detail within the birth chart. And here, even with the rising sign in Libra, again, the social nature is emphasized. This person is going to have a sense of aesthetic judgment, right? So think about aesthetics, think about appearance, think about being flashy or bold, being someone who's going to catch the attention of others. And this really provides an opportunity for this person to excel professionally in areas that require an ability to really capitalize on creative pursuits. This particular individual is going to be a natural diplomat and would be appreciated by those that he or she comes into contact with. Some people may feel that this individual is manipulative, but at the same time, if there's good intentions behind what's being done, it could be viewed as you having genuine concern for the well-being of everyone involved. At crucial times in their lives, people with this particular placement may appear to be indecisive. They may appear to constantly juggle. Okay, so what is the juggling that we're seeing in some regards in Deion's professional life? Well, he's always going back and forth between football and baseball, football and baseball, football and baseball. Pick one, right? Was the kind of way in which he was criticized early on in his career. This person can antagonize about making a decision, and sometimes, no matter how much information they have, they still won't be able to move forward. Ultimately, they're going to tend to make their decisions on what would be considered an intuitive level. So when you put all these things together, right, and you have this Leo sun, Libra rising, you get to be what we call the harmonious leader. So a person with that Leo sun and the Libra rising is like a beautifully painted piece of art, right? With an equally beautiful frame. It's really a great combination, and here's why. So we know all the things about Leo, right? Their natural leadership capabilities, their warmth, their center of attention, tendencies, they're showstoppers. They've got a flair for drama, and they love to take center stage. But when you combine it with that Libra rising, it creates a Leo that's a bit more refined, right? Because here comes that Libra element of being able to offer balance, harmony, and emphasis on relating with people. So you end up bringing this element of diplomacy into that Leo kind of energy that activates a more peaceful and a even more charming presentation for a Leo. So if you can imagine a Leo that's even more charming than your typical, it would be because of that Libra influence. So of course we know that someone with a Leo sun is going to be outspoken. They're going to kind of have that king of the jungle vibe. With the Libra influence, you are going to put a bit of a muffler on that roar, but not in a bad way. It's not as if the Leo is diminished. In fact, it really grounds that Leo energy, brings it down to earth. Although Libra is an air sign, what it's doing in this particular instance is it's making that boisterousness of Leo, it's adding a bit of poise to it, a bit of, again, refinement, a bit of charisma. Okay. There's a little bit more consideration that goes along with that flamboyant energy. And so when you think about this in relation to the other aspects that we just discussed, it's really important because you think about someone with that Sun trine Saturn, for example, they're going to be moving into a leadership role. They're going to be somebody who's going to be responsible for others. There's going to be someone with that moon sextile Mercury who's going to want to be in the public eye, who's going to want to talk and communicate as their primary kind of vocational focus. Well, that Libra rising is going to help to make it a little bit more balanced, a little bit more well thought out in terms of how a person presents. A Leo with Libra rising is a powerful leader who balances warmth and dominance with grace. That's essentially what we're trying to get to here. They are more likely to focus on fairness, and they can often set aside their ego when it's good for others. So, in other words, if a normal Leo is the king, then Leo sun with Libra rising is the benevolent king, ruling with heart, fostering peace, and spreading joy through their kingdom. So, when you combine the dazzling personality of a Leo sun with the charming diplomacy of that Libra rising, the result is really quite magical. It's truly a combination of royalty and grace. Deion Primetime Sanders. All right. So there's many other aspects of the natal chart that are fun to look at when we're trying to think about what's going to be a good way for a person to think about their professional life relative to their natural inclinations and certain placements. But we'll stop for now. I hope you've had a great time listening to Deion's chart. If you want to know more, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Thanks, guys. With love, Phoenix.